Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you for your attention.
The next speaker is Alfredo Romano, Castlepoint Numa. Did I say that Numa right? Did I get the Numa? Castlepoint, I'll just say. Welcome, Alfredo. You've got 5 minutes. You can get situated there at the table, and I'll start your time.
This one or this one? Does it matter?
Wherever you're comfortable.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair and Committee, for affording me the opportunity to comment on what's before you today. The previous speakers, particularly Mr. Bedford, Mr. Kirkland, spoke very eloquently about many of the issues that concern me as a developer on the waterfront and as a citizen. So I wholeheartedly support the points of view that they presented. Ms. Pepino is acting for us on the 3C lands, which we own, the 14 acres. But to add to that, we also own the site where the current FedEx City Station is located at Sherburne and Lakeshore, bounded by Richardson and Sherburne. We also own another 5 acres, 5.5 acres at Cherry and Commissioners between the Villiers Road and Commissioner Street. We also have significant holdings at Pinewood Toronto Studios and at the Costco site to the east. We have the distinction, some people actually, I used to get chided and vilified years and years ago when I started investing in the waterfront because people said it would never happen. We're going back 20 years to the early 90s, and so we started our investment program, and now we're the largest single landholder, private sector landholder, east of Jarvis Street. And that would include all of those sites that I mentioned, some 77 or 78 acres in total. What's interesting about what's occurred is, again, Jane Pepino mentioned that we were gobsmacked. We heard about the hybrid option on the 14th of April and had no consultation. We were engaged in a very, very lengthy process for settlement on our 3C site. The takedown discussion has been going on for years. We have been supporting and have gone on the record supporting the takedown option east of Jarvis Street for a number of years, going back at least 10 years when the discussion was opened up about remember there was a whole discussion about the takedown of the entire Gardiner, burying it. There were offerings of burying it and leaving an open cut like you have in DeCarry Boulevard in Montreal. Those were all pushed to the side for a number of reasons, but the takedown east of Jarvis was kept alive. Similarly, I was part of those discussions in 2000 when the takedown of the eastern section of the Gardiner to Leslie Street was on the table, and I heard many of the arguments. I was in this room listening to them. I believe we even submitted in support of the takedown at the time. And the same organizations, perhaps not the same people. I'm a lot grayer and older. I had black hair then, but fundamentally, we were basically told, this is horrible, this is going to be Armageddon for transportation, for road traffic. And of course, that didn't materialize. And I think we do have to look at the empirical evidence and look at the benefits versus the cost of this current situation and the current proposal before you. I can only add some anecdotal information about the impacts, because you have a number of experts who've already spoken to it very, very well. So I can't add much to that. But we're also the developers responsible for the FedEx City Station at Lakeshore. We are now in the process of replacing that city station and moving them to Carlaw, the space between Carlaw and Don Roadway on Commissioner Street. FedEx basically came to us about 8 months ago, before all this occurred, and asked us to confer with them on an analysis. They have a timely delivery business, 80 trucks that service the CBD. They came to us and said, what's happening with the Gardiner, up or down? And I said, well, I don't know. And so we said, you should study both options as it pertains to the operations of your business. And they have gone ahead, they did that analysis, and they have made the decision to proceed with the development on the Eastern Portlands, Gardiner up or down. So there's, I think, a valuable lesson learned that a timely delivery courier business of the stature of FedEx is not going to be impacted by an 8-lane boulevard, as opposed to Gardiner up, or again, and I agree with the misnomer. It really is a leave it as is option, and not hybrid. I think hybrid's an unfortunate moniker. Having said that, I was also quite disturbed, quite frankly, by the process, because we're in this settlement involving 5 million square feet, and lo and behold, that's all put into question now by the hybrid option, which was just laid on us less than a month ago. The mayor came out and spoke. I think this was referred to by a previous speaker. The mayor came out and spoke to this yesterday, prior to this committee meeting, prior to hearing any of the deputations, some 30 deputations today. And I think that the mayor should be more considered in his position, considering the weight of his office. And he should have probably waited until the floor of council to debate this and have his own views expressed, rather than try and, I think, unfortunately, slight this process. And I think he did it inadvertently, but it's done.
Sorry, I'm sorry, you have to wrap up, but you can have
I'll
questions.
wrap up
You have
very
questions.
quickly.
So first, we've got Councillor Carroll.
Okay, sorry.
You can wrap up in your questions.
Thank you.
Yes, and you were going there anyway, just as you were cut off. Did you get an opportunity to speak to the mayor before he made his comments yesterday, or were you waiting to make this formal deputation?
Well, if you have no, I'm expecting that you would. I understand that you've had, I say that only because you've had a number of submissions and deputations. I'm sure you'll get to it before council, and I will make sure that every councillor gets a copy of that letter, and certainly Ms. Pepino's letter. Again, as she said, she's looking at it at the ground level. I'm trying to look at it from an overall perspective of how the waterfront is being developed. And again, I probably can't speak as eloquently as Mr. Bedford or Mr. Kirkland to the issues, but I certainly, as a private developer, support their points of view and the takedown option for the obvious reasons.
Now, if I can get to the part of your deputation about FedEx finding a place, because that's nothing but logistics.
Yes.
So they have chosen to move themselves sort of away from what is the elevated part of the community. They're going to be at Carlaw and
Between
Lake.
Carlaw and the Don Roadway on Commissioners.
Right.
We've made an application to build a new facility there. We're moving them off of the 215 Lakeshore site, which we own.
Right.
Because that's been rezoned for 2 million square feet of mixed use.
Right.
So they're moving off by February of 2017.
Right.
They had to ask the question, how would the Gardiner circumstance affect their business? And
Right.
they looked at it, and they decided Gardiner up or Gardiner down, sort of leave as is, and or 8-lane boulevard.
Yeah.
What the impact would be on their business. And they're going ahead with the development with us
Right.
on Commissioner Street. So it's neutral to them. They're not seeing a negative impact on the 8-lane boulevard. Now, the mayor said yesterday, and I have to say, it was kind of interesting because I just did a quick count this morning, talking about the 8-lane boulevard. So the 8-lane boulevard, as far as a timely delivery business like FedEx,
Yes.
did not faze them. They're probably more concerned about the zero tolerance policy and what's that doing to courier delivery service, quite frankly.
Yeah.
But they've managed. They're doing things like picking their spots where they can stop their vehicles. Their drivers now have to walk a greater distance to service the clients because of the zero tolerance. But the 8-lane boulevard did not cause them a problem. And I think that's an important piece of information that you should have.
So
This morning, I drove down on a cab because rather than take the subway down to a DRP meeting at Waterfront Toronto, so I could count the number of cafes on our coffee shops.
Right.
I wouldn't say cafes, coffee shops on University Avenue. So just from a cursory review in a cab, from College Street to King Street, there are 11. Among them, Starbucks, Second Cup, Tim Hortons, several iterations of food providers along the way, some of them very high-end, some of them just servicing a lunch crowd. Okay. So it was very, very vibrantly serviced. So the idea of not having some sort of vibrant life on an 8-lane boulevard it's a ridiculous notion, and you need to be dissuaded of this idea that Lakeshore Boulevard can't become a great boulevard like University Avenue, which has major hospitals.
Okay, so we have to move to our next.
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I had one more question, but
okay,
I'll ask it
quickly.
offline.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Fletcher?
Yes, thanks. I just want to go over that Keating precinct again, because
Yes.
I know you've been involved in that. And that was established quite a while ago.
Yes.
And that was the plan. And nowhere in the Keating precinct plan were there ramps.
Correct.
Correct. So they've been added into a precinct plan that has been, as was indicated, done under an EA and then accepted.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
So
In fact, I would say that even our revisions to the plan that we've proposed to the city for the 3C site are perfectly consistent with the principles of the Making Waves plan and the official plan. So the Making Waves plan, which was implemented in 2003 following the unlocking report, which was 99, you'll remember these, Councillor Fletcher. So what's occurred through Mayor Lassman, Miller, and even the attempt by Mayor Ford to contravene that plan was not successful. So
Right,
through
as
three
we-
mayors, we've had the Making Waves plan and its principles adhered to. And I think it would be an unfortunate decision if this committee does
Hear
not
you.
defer this for several months. I'm going to be more aggressive than Mr. Bedford. I'm going to urge this committee to defer this decision for several months to weigh the best possible information and not rush to a decision.
I just want to go over the precinct plan again, and that is when the Portlands acceleration, when we had the attempted takeover, and we said we would do a Portlands acceleration plan, we actually hived off the precinct plan, the Keating, that could proceed. Do you remember that?
Yes.
On its own. So that's very distinct. It's got a lot of city backing. So the addition, the dropping in of 2 ramps is a bit odd. I just want to find out how many vehicles FedEx has. Do you have any idea?
They have 80 vans that are in operation. They can go to 120.
So 120 vehicles, fleet in and out.
In and out,
site.
it's typically 80, but they have a capacity or an opportunity to bring it to 120. So they have 80 vehicles that will leave the new city station. It's currently 60. It's going to 80, and it can expand to 120.
And so their results, they would have looked at what we're hearing a lot about today,
Yes.
which is the notion of this terrible congestion that would be created
Resulting from an 8-lane
resulting from
boulevard.
the remove option.
Yes.
Did they deal with that in their traffic study? Do you believe that was dealt with in their traffic study?
They have their own transportation,
I
obviously.
understand that.
They're a timely delivery service, so they do this on a regular basis. And they concluded that they would not impact their business
So
to the
even if
point
there
where
was a minute or two more, they still concluded that that would not impact their business, and they made a decision to move toward 30.
they are moving forward on Commissioner Street, subject, of course, to council's discretion, Councillor, because you bumped up the site plan application to council,
Yes, I did. I know I did.
which I know is your practice.
Thank
which
you
I'm
very
okay with
much for that. It is my practice.
Thank you. I'm wondering, I'm wondering, the 77 to 80-ish acres that you and your company or companies have in that area.
Yes.
How many of those acres are impacted by the hybrid option and the ramps associated with the hybrid option?
Look
Is it
at-
just the ones that Jane Pepino mentioned, or are there others?
No, the FedEx site, obviously, because it fronts Lakeshore Boulevard in this area where the takedown would occur. And similarly 3C, because they have frontage on Lakeshore Boulevard. So the other sites would be peripherally impacted. If you, so I have a vested interest in the takedown option because I think it improves the value of all of our assets. But I have to urge this committee to realize you're not talking about value creation for simply 14 acres that would appear in the boulevard option, which, by the way, I've heard numbers about a sale of those lands, but when you develop those lands at the densities that they have across the street, for example, you would, and follow me on this, you would probably end up with about 3.5 million square feet of development, of mixed-use development. And I don't think that's been carefully considered.
That's on the public lands.
On the public land.
On the public, so I'm
Okay, I might be,